Let's go back to our top story now, and it is our breaking news story. The IEC announcing a review panel to investigate whether the local government elections will go ahead in October. Former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke will lead that panel. I'm joined now by political commentator Oliver Dickson. So, Oliver, you know, one would reckon that the by-elections we saw this week could have been a litmus test because we saw such a low voter turnout, apparently. Is this the right move, this review panel?
Look, by-elections typically do have low voter turnout, so that's not an unusual observation to make. But the review panel is incredibly important, and it is important that we recognize that former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke has been appointed to it. In 2002, Thabo Mbeki, as the chairperson of the African Union, appointed, but at the time, Justice Dikgang Moseneke, alongside our now acting Chief Justice, Justice Kampepe, to head up the review panel of the Zimbabwe elections. The two of them went into Zimbabwe and spent months in the country in the lead up to that contentious 2002 election where Morgan Tsvangirai launched his biggest yet attack against Robert Mugabe. A lot transpired there, and Dikgang Moseneke and Justice Kampepe wrote a report on this, handed the report to Thabo Mbeki, and that report split the country in two, because many people asked Thabo Mbeki to make that report publicly available, to declassify it, because the report allegedly contained damning information about the Zimbabwe election. Dikgang Moseneke, in his book, reflects deeply on that report and says that he believes that while most of the election in Zimbabwe went ahead according to plan, the fact that laws changed and the laws at the time governing the election were incongruent to the turnout of the election. That's to say, how people were able to vote. And his reflection on that will serve as a template for the review panel's work in this upcoming election, right? And critical questions will be asked. One, has there been a stifling of people's ability to access voting polls? Two, have people been able to receive adequate resources to make an informed decision, insofar as democracy is about informed decisions? And three, and critically, were people intimidated against making those decisions? And if any of those three fail, then our election outcome will be a questionable one, right? And perhaps the review panel might look at the time when it comes and there's a rise and spike in COVID cases and say, hey, maybe we don't need a single day election, right? Maybe we need to do what happened in the United States of America late last year and have elections span over a week, so as to reduce the number of people rocking up at polling stations at any given minute, any given hour, so that we can have as safe an election process as possible. But of course, this is all dependent on what our COVID numbers look like at the time. By any estimation, we would long be past our wave 3.
Yeah. So, of course, you have parties like the EFF, the UDM, who were calling for this postponement of the local government elections for a while now. But there are other parties who say it needs to happen because communities should not be under the current leadership that they have, because they're already on the streets protesting over service delivery. And we know that local government elections is key when it comes to delivering those services.
Look, the UDM has as much skin in the game as a party that registered yesterday, because the UDM is doing terribly when it comes to local government, right? And the EFF, if anything is to go by, if the by-elections of the last couple of months are anything to go by, the EFF has not been doing well either. They've been losing ground in places where they've gained a lot of ground, with the exception of KwaZulu-Natal, where they did really well in Durban during the bonanza of local government elections that happened quite at the end of last year. And so, of course, they'll have concerns regarding timing, because timing impacts your fundraising ability, but it also impacts your mobilizing ability, right? The UDM has none of those two things, and the EFF both needs time and money to be able to best mobilize. The EFF is in a sweet spot right now when it comes to local government election. In Gauteng, for instance, they hung the city of Johannesburg, they hung Mogale city, they hung Pretoria, city of Tshwane, and those three cities are crucial. They're not sure that they'll be able to keep those king-making positions after the local government elections. And so to them, it's really just about mobilizing as many resources, as many foot soldiers as possible, overspread across as much time as possible to be able to hold on to those king-making positions.